Welcome back to Lost Treasures. In this video we will be exploring the lost treasures of the Titanic. Undoubtedly the most legendary maritime disaster in history, the ill-fated Titanic was the majestic creation of the prestigious British company White Star Line. This remarkable feat of engineering, famed for being described as unsinkable, met its tragic fate when it encountered an iceberg in the dark hours of April 14, 1912. With great anticipation and a sense of grandeur, the magnificent Titanic embarked on her inaugural journey from the bustling port of Southampton, England. The voyage was destined to take her across the English Channel, stopping briefly at the charming port of Cherbourg, France, before making her way towards the vibrant city of Cork, Ireland. Afterwards, the Titanic would embark on the more perilous transatlantic crossing towards the hustle and bustle of New York. Tragically, destiny had other plans in store for the illustrious vessel. As the Titanic pushed through the final stretch of her monumentous voyage, a collision with an iceberg altered the course of history. Within a mere 2 hours of the fateful collision, the unsinkable Titan descended into the depths of the ocean, forever etching its name into the annals of maritime tragedy. The wreck of the Titanic now lies at a depth of about 12,500 feet or 3,800 metres, about 370 nautical miles south-southeast off the coast of Newfoundland. It took 73 years before the wreck was finally discovered in September 1985 by Dr. Robert Ballard. The discovery made headlines around the world. In the wake of the calamity, a staggering toll of approximately 1,500 souls out of the 2,240 passengers on board was mercilessly claimed by the relentless cold of the Atlantic Ocean. Among the tragic victims were individuals of unparalleled wealth and influence, solidifying the Titanic's reputation as a vessel that carried the creme de la creme of society. The magnitude of the disaster, coupled with the ship's esteemed status, ignited a maelstrom of legal battles and contentious debates regarding salvage rights. Contentions were further fueled by the poignant question of whether it was ethical to disturb what some regarded as a solemn resting place, a haunting mass grave in the depths. Amidst the contentious debates, it cannot be denied that the Titanic's watery grave has yielded significant artefacts that tell fascinating tales of its passengers, both the fortunate survivors and the unfortunate victims. These relics, unearthed from the depths, offer a tangible connection to the human stories that unfolded aboard the ship. These historical treasures have found their way into the hands of collectors, enthusiasts, and museums worldwide. At auction, some of these evocative items, carrying the weight of history, have commanded staggering sums. Let's explore some of the more notable items that have been sold in recent years, before going on to discover treasures that are believed to still be inside the Titanic, deep in the ocean, waiting to be recovered. This disturbing doll's head was rescued from the floor of the Atlantic Ocean in 1977. Dragged up from a depth of approximately 6,600 feet, the porcelain figure was first thought to be a rock, but once its finder realised it was a doll's head, he treasured it until his death in 1992. The porcelain head is the exact shape of the Schuno and Hofmeister 1906 mould. This uncommon doll is known to have been on board the Titanic. After spending years in a museum in Spain, the head finally sold for $7,900 in 2018. There is an undeniable fascination surrounding the diets of those who sailed on the Titanic. Each day, menu postcards were made available to those on board. This menu depicts what passengers in third class would have eaten the day before the Titanic sank. Tragically, this is likely the last meal that many of these people would have eaten, as around 75% of those living in the lowest quarters of the ship lost their lives. This postcard is the only one of its kind known to have survived, as it was stashed in the handbag of Sarah Roth, a third-class passenger who was able to leave the sinking ship in Lifeboat C. It sold at auction for $44,650 in 2005. This first-class menu details the supper courses on April 12th, including halibut in a shrimp sauce, beef sirloin, ox tongue, and a caramel pudding. It sold for $31,250 at auction, but it's not the priciest example. In 2015, a menu featuring the last dinner served to first-class passengers before the Titanic sank sold for an incredible $118,750. On boarding the Titanic, the wealthiest 324 passengers were given a deck plan to help them navigate their way around the ship. The plan pictured belonged to a wealthy American couple, Ida and Isidore Strauss, and is believed to be one of the only 3 left in existence. Mr. and Mrs. Strauss died side by side on board the Titanic, as Ida refused a place on a lifeboat in order to stay with her husband. At the time, he was the owner of the world-famous Macy's department store in New York. The couple's maid, Ellen Bird, survived, and with her, the deck plan. Bird kept hold of the fragile document until her death in 1949, and in 2011 it sold for $48,800. Women and children were given priority in the scramble to board lifeboats in the early hours of April 15th, which separated hundreds of couples and families. This pocket watch was found with Russian passenger Sinai Kantor, who tragically died in the icy waters after successfully helping his wife, Miriam, onto lifeboat number 12. The couple had purchased 2 second-class tickets for the voyage to New York at a cost of around £26 British, which is equivalent to just over $4,200 today. The watch was put up for auction in 2018 with a winning bid of $57,500. There were around 3,500 life jackets on board the Titanic, all stuffed with cork, as was typical of flotation devices at the time. The impractical filling was so solid that many survivors and victims of the disaster were found with broken jaws as a result of the impact of jumping into the water. This jacket is believed to have been found by a farmer on the shoreline of Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1912, and appeared to be unused as the shoulder straps were still in place. One of just 6 known to exist, it sold for $68,500 in 2008. Furniture branded with the White Star Line emblem has become popular among those who collect Titanic memorabilia. In 2001, an Englishman spent $43,500 on this mahogany deck chair. It is believed to be one of around 50 thrown overboard as crew members dumped furniture in the hope it would help the ship stay afloat. This was far from the most valuable of the discarded pieces though, and in 2015 a deck chair found floating on the surface of the Atlantic sold for just over $154,000 in Wiltshire, England. The chair had been collected by the crew on the Mackay Bennett rescue ship as they were recovering the bodies of victims in the aftermath of the crisis. Correspondence documenting the experiences of passengers travelling on the Titanic are highly coveted collectibles and museum pieces. The most highly prized letter was written by American businessman Oscar Holverson. It is the only known letter written on headed Titanic notepaper to have gone into the Atlantic and survived the shipwreck. The letter was dated April 13th, just one day before the disaster, and in it, Holverson describes the Titanic as giant in size and fitted up like a palatial hotel. The document had a reserve bid of up to $98,000, but broke records when it sold for $155,000 in 2017. Edmund Stone was a bedroom steward on the E-deck of the Titanic, and so he would have contributed to the mammoth task of evacuating passengers and assisting them with their life jackets on the night of the collision. Like many members of the crew, Stone himself was not rescued from the shipwreck. His time of death is known more precisely than most though, thanks to a pocket watch he had on him on that fateful night, which was similar in style and condition to the example pictured. The watch stopped ticking at 2:16 AM, indicating that's exactly when he would have landed in the freezing waters. The timepiece eventually sold for $197,000 in 2008. One of the most famous items recovered is the violin of Wallace Hartley. As distress mounted among passengers and crew, as the Titanic plunged deeper and deeper into the icy waters, classical musician Wallace Hartley and his band decided to play music to calm those on board. Hartley eventually went down with the ship, wearing a life jacket and with his beloved violin strapped to his body. Incredibly, this instrument was later recovered from the water and returned to his fiancée, Maria Robinson. The iconic instrument became the most expensive piece of Titanic memorabilia ever sold in 2013, when it fetched an astonishing $1.4 million at auction. Whilst these and many other items have been recovered, including over $200 million worth of jewellery, there are still many items that have not. These treasures potentially remain within the wreck to this day, and would likely fetch significant sums at auction, or be huge attractions at museums and the like. Let's explore some of the more notable items waiting to be discovered. This gold necklace with a megalodon shark tooth was revealed in images from the wreckage. The megalodon shark is an extinct species that was one of the largest fish to ever exist. The stunning artifact was identified in footage in 2022. Other objects surrounding the necklace have not yet been identified, although it appears to be near a collection of beads. In 1911, the publishing house Sangorsky and Sutcliffe made a particularly lavish copy of the Rubaiyat, a book of poems by medieval Persian philosopher and mathematician Omar Khayyam. It featured a Moroccan leather cover decorated with embroidered peacocks and more than 1,000 gems set in gold. The impressive volume went on exhibition in England before being auctioned off to an American buyer for a little over $2,000. It was loaded onto the Titanic to be shipped to its new owner. In the unlikely event the Rubaiyat is recovered from the ocean, it would be worth an estimated $120,000. Steinway & Sons have been selling some of the world's priciest pianos for around 170 years. Auctioning for thousands and sometimes millions of pounds, these pianos have been owned by an elite host of celebrities. Underwater footage of the Titanic wreck shows a still standing and mostly intact grand piano. In fact, there were 5 grand pianos on the ship, 3 of which were for first-class passengers. Among those 3 was Steinway's crown jewel, the Model B, which was specially customised for the ship. There was also a Model R, which was discontinued in 1942, and a Model K, which remains in production to this day. The pianos were fastened securely to the ship's floors. When the Titanic submerged, the piano's keys, hammers, and hinged components suspended due to the buoyancy of the wood. A 1912 refurbished Model M from Steinway was recently put up for auction for nearly $35,000. Imagine how much the actual sunken pianos are worth. Many expensive pieces of art were on board the Titanic when it sank, though not the Picassos depicted in James Cameron's blockbuster. The 1814 painting, La Cirque Cien Aubin, is believed to be one of the most expensive items to go down with the ship. Painted by French artist Marie-Joseph Blondel, the stunning artwork depicted a young naked woman bathing in a setting from classical antiquity. The painting was brought on board by a Swedish businessman who survived the disaster and later demanded $100,000, approximately $3 million in today's money, for the lost painting. It was the largest claim made against the White Star Line for a single item. On January 16, 1913, the New York Times claimed that Titanic survivors had demanded a total of $6 million in compensation for lost possessions. Jewellery, baggage and even dogs were among these, in addition to one $20,000 pink diamond. These gems are extremely rare in any size and can sell for $50 million in some cases today. The Titanic diamond belonged to Mrs. Charlotte M. Cardezza of Pennsylvania, believed to be a first-class passenger. This vintage 1912 Renault, which you may recognise from the Titanic movie, is believed to have been brought on board by a man named William Carter, who actually survived the tragedy and made a claim for compensation. As of now, this is the only known car to have been on the historic ship when it sank. And finally, each passenger class on the Titanic had a different set of china to eat off, and many of the dishes are still intact at the bottom of the ocean. Reproductions of Titanic dishes are a hot commodity for collectors. When some genuine recovered plates and teacups went up for auction with some other items in 2012, the value of the entire collection was estimated at a whopping $189 million. These are just some of the treasures that may still lie within the wreck of the Titanic. Indeed, the depths of the Titanic's wreckage still guard untold mysteries and potential treasures that await further exploration. As of now, the full extent of the artifacts and riches that may remain within the sunken vessel remains uncertain. Until further explorations are completed, we cannot know what treasures remain. Thank you for joining me on this journey to uncover the story of the lost treasures of the Titanic. Please like, share and comment below. I will be releasing videos every Thursday. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to ensure that you don't miss them. Until next time, thank you.